Welcome to Legal Keys, unlocking time, revenue, and results. The podcast that connects you with the people, technologies, and trending topics shaping the modern legal landscape. From cutting-edge AI innovations to high-growth marketing strategies and everything in between. Legal Keys is your go-to resource for actionable insights. Brought to you by Faster Outcomes and hosted by Tim Sawyer, two-time Inc. 500 co-founder entrepreneur. We're here to help you navigate the tools and trends driving success in today's legal world.
Well, welcome to Legal Keys. I'm your host, Tim Sawyer, and I cannot wait to introduce my guest today. As you all know, season 2, we're super excited to have you. It's your first time joining us. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy day. To our loyal followers, we appreciate all the energy and feedback that you bring to the podcast. Today's guest, Neil Dubovsky, and I hope I'm getting that right, is the founder of Dubo Law, a highly respected trial attorney known for his work in personal injury cases, having previously represented fellow attorneys in legal malpractice and ethical matters. For nearly 3 decades, Neil has built a reputation as a lawyer's lawyer. And I want to talk a little bit about what that means. Equally comfortable representing fellow professionals in complex litigation matters and accident victims in occasionally less complex, but no less impactful personal injury cases. Neil graduated magna cum laude from the University of Baltimore School of Law. Neil went on to prestigious appellate clerkship for the Honorable Lawrence Radowski. We want to talk a little bit about that in Maryland's highest court. He's been recognized as one of the top 100 civil trial lawyers in Maryland by the National Trial Lawyers Association. Neil, appreciate you taking the time today. Thanks for hanging out, buddy.
Thanks, Tim. It's great to see you as always.
Great to see you. And I think the first thing I want to talk about is, first of all, congratulations with your academic credentials. And you and I actually met at a mastermind group. So my gut tells me that as a principal, continuing education is pretty important to you. Talk a little bit about that, where that motivation comes from.
Yeah, so a couple things on that. Number one, while I appreciate the reference, my academic career, school-wise anyways, many years behind me. And I'm a big believer in that was a stepping stone to greater things, but you're only as good as your lost great performance. And for me, that's as an attorney, not as a scholar. Having said that, lifelong learning is something that I believe is exceptionally important in any vocation. And for me, being in a mastermind group, including the one that we were lucky enough to meet at, is a reflection of the fact that I genuinely believe there's so much that I can learn and glean from other practitioners across the country. Everybody has such a unique and interesting perspective to bring to the table, both as trial lawyers, as business owners, and there's such a wealth of knowledge to be gained. I go to these events and I bring back something every time with me that I can implement at my law firm. It's just, for me, the hardest part isn't finding good things to implement. It's restricting them to something that is actually logistically possible, right? I think I've always believed you come back from these things with 20 ideas, none of them get implemented. You whittle it down to the 2 or 3 ones that are most impactful, and you actually have a reasonable chance of implementing those.
Yeah. And that's a pretty good time commitment, right? I mean, how often do you guys meet? Is it like weekly? How does that work?
We meet once a week virtually, twice a year in person, but there are also conversations, emails, virtual meetings that happen independently of our weekly group meetings. Just by way of example, I was recently dealing with an intake issue and had an offline conversation with one of the other members of the group who was incredibly helpful in terms of helping us restructure something that was creating an issue, which now seems to have been resolved. So again, if you're open to learning new things, which everybody should be all the time, there's so many great things that you can learn from other practitioners, and that I hope others have learned from me.
Yeah. And it's interesting listening to you. You sound like a business guy, right? And so my one question is I have, if you had to, kind of strange question, but if you had to guess, what percentage of your time do you spend working on Dubo Law, or how much time are you spending in it right now? Are you still practicing law?
Very little. What I do tends to be more high-level strategic work that I work with the other attorneys in my firm to help them with their cases, and I'm handling a handful of cases that I really have to be directly involved in. Tim, the best way I can think of to answer that, and the reason I smiled when you asked the question, is for the overwhelming majority of my professional career, when people have said to me, "What do you do?" I was a lawyer. I was a trial lawyer. I was a personal injury lawyer. I was a lawyer. That was how I self-identified. And now it's not. When people say, "What do you do?" I'm a business owner. Happens to be a law firm, but the overwhelming majority of my time is spent growing my firm, generating work, making sure that we have a structure and a team that helps move client cases forward, and that is scalable, right? That's the big word that I find myself thinking a lot. When you're a newer business, any business, but in my case, a law firm, and you're growing, you want to make sure that that growth um, is happens within the structure that you have, meaning your standards and the work that you do for clients is what allows you to get bigger and grow and be successful. The goal and the key is to make sure that as you scale, you continue to meet those standards.
Controlled scale, right? And I think something you mentioned is pretty profound too, particularly for younger lawyers. And that's not biting off more than you could chew. Like you said, you go to these events, you get a million ideas. And if you're not super disciplined about it, and you seem to be very disciplined, then a lot of that stuff ends up on the cutting room floor and uh, that doesn't get implemented. So question for you, as a business guy, I get asked this a lot. You're in Maryland, right? What would you say if you had to say, you know what, Tim, top three challenges I have to get this law firm the way I want to be? Here's where I really put a lot of my attention. What would you say?
Um, three. The first is making sure that the team that I have reflects the values of our firm, right? We have core values. Again, it is how I started with one employee at a folding table in my basement before we even had office space. But I had a core set of beliefs. I had a very particular way that I think law should be practiced, and the way that we needed to treat clients and employees and people in general. And to me, the biggest challenge is it's easier to do when you're smaller. As you grow, making sure that your team is aligned and continues to reflect those values is one of the biggest challenges I face. And then, and not to get too far ahead of this conversation, as an adjunct to that is the technological boom that we're seeing and how to effectively implement time-saving technological features, but in a way that makes sure you stay true to your operating philosophy, and also that it's not making you lazy, right? And I think, again, not to get too far ahead of the conversation here, but there's a tendency sometimes for people to overuse technology as a substitute for things that we should be doing ourselves. And again, that is not a legal issue. I think that is just an issue in general. And so one of the challenges for me is as I delegate more and as we grow, how do I make sure that my team is reflecting those values, that we continue to do the good work, and that we're using technology optimally, meaning we're using it efficiently, it is saving time, it is making more money for our clients, but we are also ensuring that we are doing it in a way that is accurate and right.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, and I'm curious what your take on it is. So as kids, with the rise of AI, and we'll talk more about AI, practically speaking, but with the rise of AI, the impact that'll have on not only the way that law students learn, but their ability to plug in. But then again, if you have competent artificial intelligence, does it make a difference? Like, what's your take on that, right? In other words, people ask me, well, what do you think about your kids using AI, AI in school? I'm like, I'm just going to teach my kids how to use AI really well. That's going to be my strategy.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword, like a lot of other things, right? I analogize a little bit to when the internet started. This wealth of knowledge at our fingertips, the ability, I grew up in a world of encyclopedias, and I have the most vivid memories as a kid at the dinner table having discussions. And if something came up that we didn't know, my dad would say, "Go look it up." And we had the Encyclopedia Britannica in the tea room, and my mom would yell at him, "Not during dinner, or after dinner." And now we live in a world where our kids don't even understand conceptually what that means. Every single piece of information known to man is literally in their pockets at all times. And that is an awesome thing, right? That is an incredibly awesome thing, but it carries with it dangers and risks too. And so it requires intention. And to me, what's happening with AI is really in many ways no different than that. That the we are just scratching the surface of what AI is capable of doing, and it is already just this exceptional resource. And one of the great lines, I forget who said, it may have been you that said it, Tim, but I don't remember if it was you or somebody else. Right now is the dumbest that AI will ever be. It is learning by each millisecond. It is getting smarter. It is incorporating more information, and this is going to become the new normal. And so for me, when you talk about our kids and I have tried at home, and I've tried two things. Number one, to overcome my discomfort with AI, which is very real, but also to make sure that my kids not only use it and are comfortable with it, but are doing so in a responsible way as much as I am capable of controlling that.
Smart, smart. It's interesting, Neil, that so when I'm out, as you know, I'm out traveling and speaking stuff, and I was at an event in Connecticut a couple weekends ago, and there was a lawyer that was giving an AI talk, and the looks on some of the lawyer, particularly some of the older lawyers that were in the room, was just like, "Are you freaking kidding?" Like what this woman could do, right? She took a family law case from opening it up to settlement, right? Drafting the letter, and you could. Some of the people were actually had the best way I could describe it was they had this identity crisis. Like it clicked in their brain. Wait, that's what I do. And now they're watching, essentially a machine do that. And I think there's got to be this. What's interesting I see more and more, particularly older lawyers now embracing AI. That seems to be coming along. And it's it's how do you think it's going to shake out the next couple of years? How is this going to impact the law and the way you
Yeah,
practice law and
I,
train
I,
people? And
I wish I had a good answer to that question. I don't know. Here's what I can tell you that I've noticed among my fellow practitioners, and I have very strong feelings about this because I've been paying very close attention. I think too many people in the legal field, and this may be true generally. I'll speak to what I know, which is other lawyers and fellow PI law firm owners. Too many lawyers are treating it as a binary construct, meaning AI is either amazing and a cure-all, or it is evil and we want to stay away from it completely. Right? I'm on a local listserv here, and there's a phenomenal trial lawyer here in Maryland who's just truly an exceptional person and an exceptional lawyer. And the topic of AI came up on one of our listservs, and he wrote this pretty long email about AI is awful. You can't trust it with anything. We don't even allow anybody to use it in our office. It hallucinates. And he went through all sort of the negative things that AI does, right? And his takeaway from that was, and therefore we won't use it at all to do anything. And conversely, I've had people tell me both in writing and in person, AI is just tremendous. Like literally, my goal is to do every single thing in my office through AI if I can. And I think both of those extremes are wrong. Um, I think on the one side, AI is not yet at a place where it's capable of doing things at a level that is certainly in my case at a level that will allow us to continue to meet our standards. But it also does a lot of things really well, that allows us to use it in ways that we find efficient and helpful. And so I think the answer, much like other things in life, is you use it where it helps you. You verify the information that you're getting, and in areas where it doesn't help, you continue to do it the old-fashioned way. And eventually AI may catch up, and eventually it may do those things better, right? So it's constantly evolving, but you evolve with it. And so again, just to go back to my initial point, I fundamentally reject people who have this construction that they've created of it's either all good or all bad. Like most things, it's both.
right, right. And you had an interesting take. You and I were talking for a bit, and there's this one school of thought. I talk to lawyers, and they say, "I'm not going to get involved in the AI game because the cost of intelligence is going to come down so fast that it'll be way cheaper 2 years from now than it is today." Then there's this other school of thought. You felt like you might have been in another camp where, like a cell phone. How many people have a cell phone bill that's gone down in 4 years? No. And so, it's interesting, and I do want your take on it on the podcast. Think of the control, the amount of control that folks have in that intelligence layer. right? And it's not like a million people have it. There's going to be 6 or 8 camps that control all that intelligence. What do people think is going to happen to the price?
Yeah, that was when we spoke about it, that was really um my core concern, right? And just to be completely clear, I am in no way, shape, or form a subject matter expert on AI. But I do live in a world as a business owner of cost benefit analysis, right? Every single thing that I do is filtered through the prism of what is the cost and how will it benefit me, and what are the long and short term implications of doing whatever the thing is. And one of the things I just couldn't seem to get around as I researched more about AI is you have all of these people fighting for space in the AI world, right? At multiple, you have the main players, and then you have beneath them different layers of people who are layering on top of the LLMs to provide services that are industry specific, and there's seed money coming in from VC. That like there's just this big battle going on right now in the AI space, all of which, as best I can, not all of which, but a lot of which, as best I can tell, is centered around these data centers that are incredibly expensive to operate. And right now, you use the cell phone example. I'll throw another one out there, which is the analogy I think of in my head. When companies like Hulu and Sling and YouTube TV came along, the premise was cut the cable, cut the cord, because it's going to be cheaper to do streaming. And most people left to do streaming because it was less expensive than cable, right? They were frustrated with cable in general, and all of a sudden, streaming was perceived to be easier. And oh my goodness, look how much lower my TV bill is. And over time, what happened, almost like the frog boiling in the pot, was people eventually turned around and said, wait a second, my bill went up $5 6 months ago, and now it's going up 10. And over time, what ended up happening was people turned around and they're like, you know what? It's actually not less expensive anymore. In many instances, it's more expensive to have Hulu or YouTube TV than it was to have cable. And I think the same thing is going to happen in the AI space, but it's going to happen a lot less incrementally. It's going to happen slowly initially and then very quickly, which is these data centers, as more people use AI and it grows and grows, the, there's a lot of cost being absorbed right now by some of this VC that's coming in an attempt to figure out who the winners and losers are going to be, and people want to get in the game and they want to figure out the best way to do this. But once that shakes out, those costs are going to have to they're going to be looking to get money back. They're going to want return on investment. And so to use just as an example, a model like Claude, which is right now charging $20 a month for personal usage for non-free account, right? That is not going to be a sustainable model long term for a company that is bankrolled by people who are going to want, with investors, who are going to want to see a return on that investment. Pretty much a short-term fix. And so it's a very long-winded answer to your question, Tim, but I feel very strongly about this.
In my opinion.
Like, eventually the costs are going to skyrocket. And so for me, one of the key things about AI and understanding that it has to be part of my practice on some level, right? How we utilize it and what we utilize it for, that's going to be a case by case analysis. But the use of it as a practical matter is something I decided we needed to incorporate. That it needed to be done in a way that helped at least control the costs in a way that provided more stability. Because that felt very important to me, because my feeling is that 3, 5, 7 years down the road, we're going to be looking at a very, very different AI space in terms of cost. And the people who get in earlier, now there's some people who are more conservative, right? There's some people going to say, look, that fight you're talking about with the winners and losers, I want to wait for that to shake out a little bit so I make sure I don't bet on the wrong horse. That's fine. I understand that. That's a more conservative approach. But what those people are going to find is they're going to be paying a whole heck of a lot more for something that's significantly more advanced than they would now. So again, going back to my main point, cost benefit analysis, right? Do you want to get out on the ground floor and take some risk, but understand that it may save you money down the road? Or do you want to wait for it to shake out, understanding that you may be in a better place with the provider you pick, but it's going to cost you a lot more money?
It is. And on a very personal note, I can tell you there are elements to what we're building. It'll be a long time before we recoup the cost of that, right? We know that we're operating in that model that you just described, right? Because we're dialing in as other folks are. Yes, there's a lot of money that's being absorbed that will be recaptured.
Yeah.
These guys don't forget.
No. Look, it's a money-making venture, right? I mean, we're all in business to be profitable. Nobody's doing this out of the goodness of their hearts. And at some point, the investors are going to want to see a return.
Yep, for sure. I think that's actually a spot on take. Probably one of the best takes we've had on Legal Keys around that. So as you think going forward, right? The firm's been scaling, right? Is your goal to keep the firm around the size it is? Do you want to go broader in the state? Like, what's your 5 years? Here's where I'm trying to get to. And what advice, and we'll start to wind down with that. What advice do you have for that guy who's, 23 years old or just 24, he's just getting out, or gal, just getting out of law school? What's the world going to look like for them? Right? We want to leave them a little wisdom.
Yeah, that 23-year-old should be prepared to, if they decide they want to start their own practice, to run a very different practice than the one I started 7 years ago and the one I'll likely have 5 years from now. To answer your fundamental question, growth is good, not for its own sake. Growth builds in stability. Growth allows me to ensure that if I lose an employee or an attorney, or a client or a strategic partner, that I'm somewhat immunized from the consequences of that because I've spread that risk around some. And so growth certainly helps with that, but it's got to be in a way that is true to my core message, my core philosophy. You talked earlier about discipline. To me, that discipline is key to what I've been able to do. I consider discipline to be the most important quality that any business owner can have,
Yeah, I
if I'm
can
being
see that.
honest. And most people think of discipline solely from the perspective of hard work. Obviously, that's a part of it, no question. But I actually mean discipline in a slightly different sense. I mean, there will be times as a business owner, and I know this because I faced it myself and I made mistakes at the beginning, where where a case comes in, right? You get a lead, something comes in, and there's that siren song, that call of, oh, it's a fee. Oh, I know I can turn this into something. I can generate revenue and income from that. And you end up signing a case you shouldn't, even though in your heart of hearts you knew you shouldn't. And it almost always ends up being a mistake. And so part of the discipline is making sure that you know what you do, you're good at what you do, and most importantly, you don't do what you don't do. So for example, I've never done workers' comp. I just never done it. It had never been part of my work life experience until when I started my own firm. And when I started my own practice, a lot of people said to me, a lot of lawyers do comp and PI. And Neil, you're a smart guy. Why don't you incorporate workers' comp into your practice? You'll figure it out, right? A lot of other people did, and they do very well doing it. And my answer was always the same. I've never done it. I don't want to learn how to do it handling other people's cases. That's not fair to them. There are other people who do it better than me. And if I cannot manage and sustain and grow a practice that my PI practice, which is what we do, then my business doesn't deserve to be successful. And so we've been able to continue to grow and be successful because we are very disciplined at knowing what we do and knowing what we don't. So if a case comes in and it's not in our wheelhouse, it gets referred out. That client deserves to be with someone who is better for their case. And that is one of our core philosophies. And what we have found is that because we have done that, those clients appreciate that. And they end up, even though somebody else handles the workers' comp case, the medical malpractice case, whatever it is, they'll come back to us because they value the honesty and the integrity.
Yeah, you stay in your lane, and that's probably one of the hardest things in business to do as a business owner myself, because like you said, it's that little squirrel that goes by. You go ooh,
Yeah,
and but
every
then it
time.
can cause massive disruption at the same time. And I can tell just by hanging out with you, I can tell your core values, right? Culture, discipline, hard work shows in the way the law firm's growing, um, and you've got great sense as to the direction this thing's going in. I hope. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to add one more thing, which is, and again, it's going to sound a little corny and trite, but I don't mean for it to. To the 23-year-old who's thinking about starting their own law firm, purpose. Make sure you understand your purpose is. What is it that you want to do? What is it that drives you professionally above everything else? And I will tell you right now, it cannot just be to make money, right? That is never going to be enough to sustain a career long term. For me, having started my career on the defense side, the reason I made the switch was I love the place that I worked. I love the people I worked with, but my heart ended up not being in it. I knew in my heart of hearts that I needed to be on the side of the people who were injured. And it gives me a sense of purpose. It gives me value that I am able to help people who are hurt. And that is true as much today as it was when I started practicing and when I started my own law firm and every day since. And that purpose gives me energy because I can tell you from personal experience, and Tim, as a business owner, you will do the same. There are going to be days when you are tired. There are going to be days that you are frustrated, and there are going to be days where things are not going the way that you want them to. And if all that's driving you is just the financial component or some more superficial things, you're not going to be able to overcome those downs. But having that sense of purpose, knowing that you're genuinely helping people, that's what drives you to get through some of the periods which are a little bit tougher and make sure that, you're continuing to scale the mountain.
Yeah. And I think to your point, your tank gets drained pretty quickly, absent of purpose. And
Yeah.
I think that's going to be the main theme of this podcast. All right. So you're growing like crazy. If someone hears a podcast, they want to send you an email, or where can they find you?
Yeah. So, easy part is our phone number, which is 443-275-6345. They can call that anytime. My email is easy enough. It's my first name, which is Neil at dubolawfirm.com. It's DUBO and then LAWFIRM.com. And our website is just dubolawfirm.com. We're based in Maryland. We practice exclusively in Maryland, and we do PI, right? It's our bread and butter. And I have 3 lawyers in-house, a really amazing team. We really work very hard to create the right culture and structure. I'm a process guy. I believe very strongly in having processes and procedures. I think not only did your firm run better, but your employees know what's expected of them. We run like a business. We have KPIs, we have processes, we have case management systems, CRMs. Everything funnels through a process and a system, because otherwise it's just chaos.
I think that's great advice and not super easy to live by. So kudos to you. Want to thank everybody. First of all, thank you, Neil, for joining us today. I want to thank our listeners for joining us. We encourage you to stay tuned to season 2. Visit us at fasteroutcomes.com. This is sponsored by Faster Outcomes. Have a great week.